The EU as a supranational political and economic union has for years been a pillar of progress within Europe by protecting businesses and consumers within the euro area through operating as a single market for all member states, improving the regional security by launching many common security and defense policies. Despite all that it offers to its members, on the 31st of January 2020, the UK formally ceased to be a member state of the EU. Why, you may ask? There were several reasons behind the UK's departure from the EU. Reasons like to minimize skyrocketing numbers of migrants and completely take control, to regain full control of its sovereignty, having a larger stand-alone economy, anti-establishment politics, and much more. As these factors gained momentum throughout the years, some political leaders and citizens started speculating and fronting the idea of their country leaving the EU. On the 23rd of June 2016, the UK held a referendum in an effort to answer the question if the UK should remain a member of the EU or leave. To the majority, leaving the EU was considered as a solution to almost all their country's problems. So, by a margin of 51.9% to 48.1%, the UK voted to leave the European Union in a move commonly referred to as Brexit. By leaving the Union, the UK lost its negotiating power in free trade with other EU member states, causing the volatility and affecting businesses operating within the country. Now the question is, has Brexit done more harm than good? Let's take a look at it right now when Asinga unfolds. If you are watching this video from the UK, it's more than obvious that food prices have been drastically rising. Don't get me wrong, I know there are many other reasons behind this. For example, the war in Ukraine, the global economic crisis, inflation, and etc. The UK has suffered a lot more compared to other countries of the same common challenges in comparable GDP. Just during the first months of 2021, food prices went up by 6%, which is a result of Brexit exacerbating the phenomenon with additional customs costs on the country's food imports. This means that at least £200 have added to the average household food bill until the beginning of 2022. Now, as we near 2023, recent research suggests that high food costs imported from the EU member states continues to skyrocket due to extra red tape and checks. But this has not only affected food prices, it has also sabotaged the supply chain, and as a result, food shortages could not fail to break out. In more challenges brought about by Brexit is extreme trade barriers, which have majorly made free trade between the UK and the EU impossible or costing the earth. Since its departure from the EU's single market and customs union, British businesses are paying more import and export taxes than at any point in history, and the last 5 months towards January 2022 were among the highest individual months on record for customs duties. This also indicates that the value of customs duties paid by UK businesses went up rapidly. In just 12 months, there was a 64% increase in this value, from 2.9 to 4.5 billion pounds, and these figures are not the newest. As we journey on, a sub to the channel is highly appreciated, so remember to take a second and subscribe. Now, the ongoing limitation of resources and extreme payouts on imports and exports has made demand greater than supply. This is known as scarcity. And now, consumers find themselves in a position of having to execute difficult decisions when it comes to best allocating resources while satisfying all basic needs and as many wants as possible at the same time. It is obvious that Brexit has trapped millions of families into financial hardships, crippled or forced countless businesses into obliteration amidst inflation. As I stated earlier, all these challenges are enticed by other external factors, but for the UK, Brexit added salt to the wound. Up to 80% of high price growth on commodities and customs duties is due to Britain leaving the EU. The country's inflation jumped to over 10% in July 2022, which at the time was the highest level since February 1982, and this has intensified the squeeze on financially fragile households. Throughout these fickle economic months, the British pound has continuously lost its value, seeing the worst since the aftermath of the Brexit referendum. This is most obvious if we look at the last 12 months, where a resounding fall of the British sterling recorded was over 9%. This means for businesses in the UK importing goods that are worth, say for example, 500,000 euros from EU member countries, the costs on such a shipment have fluctuated by almost 50,000 euros. To most business owners, importing merchandise from as far as China is nowadays better than importing from EU countries, as it may save them money and extensive paperwork processes. Brexit did only hinder free trade, it also abolished free movement. And yes, the UK departed from the EU as the way to end free movement of EU residents and citizens while targeting migrants, but now they are regretting it. You see, the eradication of free movement as an achievement of the UK's action to exit the Union has amplified labour shortages, and so UK employers are increasingly confronted with recruitment difficulties. How does all this happen, you may ask? Even before the transition period after Brexit referendum, EU workers were gradually leaving the UK as they faced risks resulting from working requirements imposed onto them as EU members within the UK. This brought a significant rise in vacancies within the country, since most jobs relied heavily on EU workers even during pre-pandemic settings, and so in many sectors such as hospitality, warehouse and transportation, workers are insufficient, leading to persistently unfilled vacancies as out-migration reduces the number of remaining workers. The problem is, this has also scared off investors. Since the referendum, many investors and business owners have been wrapped into a vortex of uncertainty that surrounds Brexit and the country's unclear economic future, which also reflects on companies either putting plans on hold or taking their investment to other EU countries. But this is not the only factor behind the increasing lack of investment in the UK. Other Brexit-related factors include reduced UK trade openness, low foreign direct investment inflows, disrupted immigration growth, new border frictions, and high transport costs. As such issues pose new barriers to trade and continue impacting investment growth in a negative way, Brexit has extended its tainting grip to the country's GDP. Just during the final quarter of 2021, the UK's gross domestic product was more than 5% lower. This also altered the country's investment in goods trade, decreasing each by almost 14%, which is lower than what they would have been had the UK remained in the European Union. As of now, more than 75% of Britons have regrets and concerns, all resulting from Brexit, but also wish to rejoin the EU, according to polls. Sadly, the UK is no longer trusted by the EU member states because of Boris Johnson's reign of chaos that made Brexit possible in the first place, because of his calamity and disregard for international law and treaties, even when that treaty was proposed and signed into law by Johnson himself. Amid these allegations, the controversial Prime Minister resigned on the 7th of July 2022. To understand more about Boris Johnson and why he resigned, click on the pop-up card or wait until the end of this video. But as much as things are this way, the EU seems to have closed the door on the other side. It is unfortunate that things may never go back as a result of the dreadful behavior reflected by Johnson and his successors, meaning that the door is firmly shut for the foreseeable future. Now, you know how Brexit got the UK into this economic pain and despair. Do you think now is the time for the UK to have a conversation with EU officials and find common ground mostly in areas that will benefit both sides? Or is the UK simply going through what any emerging market goes through? If you have anything to say or correct, please feel comfortable and drop that down in the comment section. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you again soon.